Iran's new supreme leader has issued his first public statement since taking power, and it is absolutely chilling in its defiance and implications for the global economy. Mojtaba Khamenei, who succeeded his slain father, struck a profoundly defiant tone on Thursday, vowing to keep blocking the Strait of Hormuz and promising to avenge the blood of the martyrs. In written statements carried by Iranian state media, Mojtaba said Iran would pursue an effective and regret-inducing defense, and that the lever of blocking the Strait of Hormuz must also continue to be used. Continue to be used not as a last resort, as ongoing, sustained strategy. About 2,000 people have been killed since the start of the US-Israeli assault, mostly in Iran, and Mojtaba is making absolutely clear Iran has no intention of backing down or opening that vital waterway. Meanwhile, the economic consequences intensify by the hour. The Middle East conflict forced closures of oil terminals in Iraq and Oman on Thursday as oil shipments come under increasing threats from attacks on depots, refineries, ports and ships. The price of Brent crude briefly jumped above $100 a barrel before settling at about $97. And in a deeply alarming escalation, the Israeli military has just issued its first evacuation warning for central Beirut, ordering residents to evacuate a building near Lebanon's parliament. That is miles from the southern suburbs where Israel previously concentrated strikes. This is Israel moving into the heart of Beirut. Let's start with Mojtaba's statement because it tells you everything about Iran's strategic mindset. This is his first public comment as supreme leader, and what does he emphasize? Defiance. Revenge, continued blocking of the Strait of Hormuz. Not peace. Not diplomacy, not seeking an off-ramp, but vowing to pursue an effective and regret-inducing defense. Regret-inducing defense. Think about that phrase. That is not defensive language about protecting territory. That is a promise to make America, Israel, and their allies regret this war so profoundly they'll wish they'd never started it. That is a vow to inflict pain and economic devastation on a scale that forces enemies to regret their actions. And the primary mechanism blocking the Strait of Hormuz. Mojtaba said explicitly the lever of blocking the Strait of Hormuz must also continue to be used. The lever, he is calling it a tool, an instrument of policy, and it must continue to be used. Not might be, not could be, if necessary, must continue. That is definitive. That is policy. Iran is committed to keeping that strait blocked or threatened indefinitely as leverage. And he vowed to avenge the blood of the martyrs, 2,000 Iranian dead. The new supreme leader is telling his people and enemies this blood will be avenged, not forgotten. Not mourned and moved past. Avenge, that is a promise of retaliation, continued fighting, sustained conflict until Iran feels justice has been served. This is not the statement of a leader seeking peace. This is defiance. This is commitment to prolonged war. This is a new supreme leader threatened by Israel with assassination before he even took power, telling the world he will not be intimidated, will not back down, and will continue using Iran's most powerful economic weapon, control over the Strait of Hormuz. And the consequences are already devastating global energy markets. The Middle East conflict forced closures of oil terminals in Iraq and Oman on Thursday. Not one terminal, multiple terminals in multiple countries. Attacks on depots, refineries, ports and ships have made normal oil operations impossible in parts of the region. These closures immediately rippled through already volatile energy markets. The price of Brent crude, the global benchmark, briefly jumped above $100 a barrel on Thursday before settling at about $97. That is still catastrophically high for consumers, economies, inflation, everyone who drives a car or heats a home. And this is with the strait only partially blocked or threatened. Imagine what happens if Mojtaba makes good on his promise and Iran fully blocks the Strait of Hormuz. 1/5 of the world's oil passes through that waterway. If that flow stops completely, oil prices don't just hit $100. They go to $120, $140, possibly higher. The global economy faces recession. Inflation spikes everywhere. The poorest suffer most. The economic impacts, as the reporting notes, have been intensifying daily with disruptions to oil and shipping. This isn't static. This isn't a one-time shock markets absorb. This is daily intensification. Every day brings new attacks, new closures, new disruptions, new price spikes. The situation is deteriorating, not stabilizing. And then there is Lebanon, which shows this war continues to expand. The Israeli military has just issued its first evacuation warning for central Beirut. Previously, Israel concentrated strikes on southern suburbs, known Hezbollah strongholds. But now Israel is ordering evacuations in central Beirut, near Lebanon's parliament, miles from areas previously targeted. Israel ordered residents to evacuate a building and indicated an airstrike was imminent. That is moving into the political and commercial heart of Lebanon's capital that is expanding beyond Hezbollah-controlled areas into central Beirut, where government institutions, businesses and residential areas mix. The humanitarian implications are enormous. The risk of killing civilians increases. The perception of collective punishment intensifies. Here is the bottom line. Mojtaba Khamenei has issued his first statement vowing to continue blocking the Strait of Hormuz and avenge 2,000 martyrs. He promised regret-inducing defense and said strait blockage must continue to be used. This is defiance, not diplomacy. Oil terminals in Iraq and Oman forced to close due to attacks. Brent crude briefly jumped above $100, settling at $97. Economic impacts intensified daily. Israel issued first evacuation warning for central Beirut, expanding strikes miles from previous zones. We have a new Iranian supreme leader promising continued strait blockage and vowing revenge. Oil infrastructure shutting down across the Middle East. Oil prices at catastrophic levels threatening global recession. Israel expanding into central Beirut. And absolutely no diplomatic process, no peace talks, no off-ramps. Mojtaba's first statement could have been conciliatory. Instead, he chose defiance, revenge, and continued economic warfare. The message is clear. Iran is preparing for long war, will use oil leverage relentlessly, and has no intention of backing down regardless of cost. The world economy suffers, oil markets convulse, and leaders promise regret and revenge rather than peace. This has been The Royal Truth. I'll see you next time.